The New York Mets pulled off something tonight that we will not see much this season. They went into Citizens Bank Park and won a game 2-0 with that great lineup with Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto, Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, Tylor Megill, and the Mets bullpen found a way to shut that team out and get back in the win column. On today's show, I'll discuss what we watched in this game. I want to talk about Edwin Diaz and Drew Smith as a potential duo at the back end of the Mets bullpen. Smith is a name you need to watch. And then also today, we have to talk about Robinson Cano because I think he's getting way too much playing time. We're going to go through all of that on this edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. So breaking down the game we watched on Tuesday night, there's really not a lot to talk about offensively for this Mets team. They only got 3 hits. Brandon Nimmo put them on the board in the 5th inning, hitting a home run off his old friend Zach Wheeler. That ended the day for Wheeler. And Wheeler actually early on looked awful out there. He was hitting batters. He was all over the place. We're going to talk about Canoe at the end of the show, but in that first inning, Canoe bails him out, bases loaded spot. Strikes out, and that basically ended the struggles for Zach Wheeler. He did what we've seen Wheeler do so many times before, particularly in a Phillies uniform, which is right the ship after a rough first inning and just find a way to buckle down. Gave the Phillies more than I was even expecting coming in when it came to his pitch count. So Zach Wheeler once again reminded us how much we miss seeing him in a Mets uniform. The Mets struggled to get anything going off their bullpen as well, though. They got the one insurance run in the 8th inning. Brandon Nimmo led off things with a walk. Nimmo continuing to be the only productive offensive player in this game. But then he trades places with Starling Marte on a ground out. They couldn't double off Marte. Marte then steals second on the first pitch, by the way, which is perfect. That is what you want from a great base stealer. Steal that bag early. It allows your hitter to get a full at-bat in there to try to drive you in. And Lindor was able to do just that, got the clutch hit that gave the Mets the insurance run they needed. But that's all we could talk about for offense for the Mets tonight. 2 runs. And you go into Philly and you win anyway because the pitching, just sensational. Taijuan Walker, by the way, will be out for some time. Shoulder bursitis is the diagnosis. 10-day IL, will miss a couple of turns in the rotation. Then he'll rehab in whatever, somewhere in the Mets minors to ramp back up. So we may not see Walker for a little bit, maybe a month, if not longer. So David Peterson will slot into the rotation, which if you listen to yesterday's show, I think will be fine for the Mets, at least in the short term, especially when you have a Tylor Megill who is breaking out in a big way. And with that, with Max Scherzer, Chris Bassett, Carlos Carrasco looking sharp, and Megill, the Mets still have a really good rotation. And in this start, Megill goes 5 1/3, gave up 3 hits, no walks, 5 strikeouts. Once again, does not allow a run. If you look at the breakdown of his pitches, one of the things that's very interesting to me, 37% whiff rate on his fastball. It is hard to get whiffs on a fastball because guys can at least foul it off, right? In this game, 10 whiffs on 27 swings. That fastball is elite. We've known that since last year, but it's only gotten better. He's adding velocity. Last year, he was sitting more 95. Now he's sitting 97. You pair that with improving breaking pitches that are getting whiffs as well. You look at his changeup, got 3 whiffs on 9 swings, not bad. And then the slider, 3 whiffs on 4 swings. So if he can continue to improve those breaking pitches with the way that he's locating that fastball with that velocity, this guy's going to be special for the Mets. Also, the spin rates are up across the board as well. So that just shows how he is continuing to progress as a pitcher. Now, you look at the bullpen in this game, and here's the thing, right? Suddenly, Buck Showalter can be a genius because for a night, all of his decisions worked out. Now, my guy, Chasen Shreve, entered the game for the Mets in the sixth inning with a runner on second base and one out, and he had to face the top of the lineup. So Schwarber, Real Muto, Harper. Unlike Joely Rodriguez, Shreve, pretty good at getting both lefties and righties out. He gets Kyle Schwarber to ground out, then he strikes out JT Real Muto. Huge to get out of that spot. Buck goes back to him in the next inning to face Bryce Harper. He gets a ground out. So great night for Chasen Shreve. Gets 3 outs. Have to love it. Then Buck goes to Drew Smith. And we're going to talk about Drew Smith in depth a little bit more in the next segment. But in this outing, he was great. He gave up a double to Nick Castellanos, but then strikes out the next two batters. Then he goes back out and pitches a 1-2-3 eighth. What's funny about that is there was the reactionary fans, the backseat drivers, the backseat managers who were complaining, where's Adam Ottavino? Why is he going back to Drew Smith? Guess what? Drew Smith looked great tonight, and that's why I went back to him. And here's a revelation I had last night. I was thinking about after I recorded the show, I'm like, why do fans always crush the manager for how they manage the bullpen or how they manage the game? And I realized it's because you're sitting on the couch and you got Cheeto dust all over you. Maybe you're polishing off your third Miller Lite. You're watching the ball game. I'm not knocking you. I might be sitting in the exact same seat in my house. But when you see, JT Realmuto last night hit a home run, you don't think, well, I could have got JT Realmuto out. You don't think, in the big spot when Canoe's up in the first inning, I could have got a base hit because you couldn't have, because you can't be a professional baseball player. But you do think that you could be a manager because, hey, I can make a decision. I can manage a bullpen. And I think that's why managers get crushed because it's the one thing that you're watching on the television where you're like, I could do that job better than that guy, and that's why my team's losing. That's what it is. And honestly, you couldn't do the job better than that guy. There's a reason why Buck Showalter has been a manager this long. And again, we are not nitpicking his decisions in April. So Buck gets to be a genius tonight because the bullpen did their job. Edwin Diaz comes out. A little bit of some traffic on the bases that made you nervous, but strikes out 3 batters. Gotta love it. The slider was just ridiculous in this start or in this outing for Diaz. You look at the breakdown again. He strikes out Kyle Schwarber to start things off. Had to face that top of the lineup. Gave up a hit to JT Realmuto. Then he strikes out Bryce Harper, and then Nick Castellanos hits an absolute missile to Francisco Lindor, which he makes an incredible stop on. Tries to get the force out at second, but JT Realmuto is just too fast. Maybe he should have gone to first. I think he had a play on Castellanos, but it becomes a moot point because Diaz then strikes out Rhys Hoskins, and the Mets get the 2-0 victory. So the Mets look good in this game. They get back on track. They got a rubber match tomorrow, Scherzer versus Nola. Hopefully they can win this series. But what I really like the most from this game is the guys that got the high leverage outs. Could it be a Drew Smith, Edwin Diaz show at the back end of the Mets bullpen this year? I really think it can be. I think Edwin Diaz can be better than we've seen him in a Mets uniform before. I want to talk about that. But really, I want to talk about Drew Smith, who I think is quietly maybe the second best reliever in this Mets bullpen. Before we get into that, BetOnline is your number one source for all of your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of the Major League Baseball season. BetOnline.net is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs to esports and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, let's talk about high leverage relievers on this Mets team. I think going into the year, it was Edwin Diaz, Trevor May, and I think a lot of people put Adam Ottavino maybe as the third guy in that bullpen when it comes to getting big outs. And Ottavino could surprise me and be really good this year. But I look at Ottavino and I just think it is another Jeurys Familia. He'll be great some days and he'll walk a lot of batters and some other days and hurt you. So I don't necessarily trust him as a high leverage guy as much as I trust some other relievers on the Mets. Trevor May, I should also note, will avoid an IL stint, just a tricep strain. They're going to rest him a couple days. I don't imagine you would see him pitch in the final game of this series. The Mets have a day off on Thursday, and then hopefully he can be good to go this weekend. But who else can get these outs if it's not Ottavino and if it's not May? To me, it's Drew Smith. And I feel like I have done him a disservice by not paying him more attention up to this point because really, you look at what he did last year, it was the quietest 2.4 ERA season of MLB history. I'm being a little bit facetious there, but like, who saw that? Who even remembered him being that good? He was just quiet. It's because he doesn't get those high leverage situations. He pitches in a lot of games, or he pitched in a lot of games last year where he was going out in the 6th inning or the 5th inning, and he just wasn't in those big spots where the lights were on him and he could really shine. But you look at the numbers again: 2.40 ERA, 1.06 WHIP, had 41 strikeouts and 41 and a third. Just a quality relief pitcher. And you look at what he's done this year: 3 appearances. He's gotten 11 outs so far because he got 5 tonight, 6 strikeouts, no walks. What does this guy do that I love? It's that latter part. It's the no walks. It's the fact that he's got a fastball that he trusts, that he commands the upper part of the zone with, and he attacks with it. It's sitting tonight at 96 and a half miles per hour. Last year it was sitting 95. So there might be a little bit of an uptick in velocity for him, but I don't even think he needs that uptick. It's just having command with the pitch. When he's able to command the top of the zone with that fastball, he also has a cutter that he can change eye levels with that can, induce some soft contact, some ground balls, and then he'll mix in the occasional curve or the changeup, which just to kind of keep the hitter off balance. You maybe try to sneak a curveball in for a strike, or you bury one to try to get a batter to chase when you're ahead in the account. I just like his moxie. I like his stuff. I like his makeup. And when you see a reliever in this Mets bullpen that's 28 years old, that's more in his prime than an Adam Ottavino, or even to a certain extent a Trevor May. Not that Trevor May is old in the tooth, but he's just a little bit farther along in his career. Here is a controllable reliever the Mets have right now. And I don't think he gets nearly enough attention. And I also don't think he gets nearly enough opportunities late in games. So I love seeing him come in to a tight spot in this game, whether that's out of necessity because of Lugo going yesterday and some of the other guys, Trevor May being out, or if it's because Buck really trusts him. But then he sends it back out there. And I don't mind that. I want to see some of these guys be able to go out and when they're on, get 2 innings out of them. I like that as a strategy because if you're trying to string together 4 relievers in a game sometimes, there's a better chance that one of those guys is going to have an off night. So if you see a pitcher like Drew Smith going out and commanding that fastball, getting ahead on guys, and just looking dominant, send him back out. That's why I didn't mind what he did with Trevor May either. I think if this is what you continue to do with your relievers, they'll adjust to it and they can thrive in these roles. And I also think if you look around baseball, that is how some of these smarter teams manage their bullpens. Get a couple of innings out of these guys. So I really like Drew Smith as an option for this Mets team. The X factor, though, is Edwin Diaz. Edwin Diaz, if this Mets team is going to reach the heights that we expect them to, Edwin Diaz has to be the Mariners' Edwin Diaz that we have yet to see in a Mets uniform. And tonight, sure, he had some traffic on the bases, but his slider was untouchable. That slider is so nasty. It has such a tight break to it that it comes in so hard as well. Batters, can they even identify it's a slider before they're swinging through it? Likely not. They're gearing up for 100 because Diaz has that in the tank. And then he throws that slider to you, and it is just so hard to hit. And in this game, he throws 15 sliders. Here's the interesting thing. He got swings on 11 of them. So batters see it. It's in the zone. They're trying to hit it, and they can't touch it. 8 whiffs on 11 swings. It's nasty. It's absolutely nasty. And you look at what he did last year. If you go to the MLB percentile rankings, yes, he had a 3.22 ERA. He didn't have the type of ERA that a Josh Hader might put up in a season where it's sub 2. But you look at the way he measured on the advanced metrics compared to other pitchers. Fastball velocity, 100th percentile. Chase rate, 82nd percentile. Whiff percentage, 96th percentile. Barrel percentage, 88th percentile. Strikeout percentage, 96th percentile. Expected ERA, 96th. Expected batting average, 97th. Expected slugging, 98th. Expected WOBA, 96th. Hard hit percentage, 99th. This guy is one of the best pitchers in the game today. He needs to be lights out for this Mets team to get to where they want to go. And I think he has all of the makings to do that. There is no reason why this guy should ever be touched, should ever be roughed up. That's how good his stuff is. I don't know if it's a mental thing with him in previous seasons, but if he gets over that hurdle, if he's comfortable in a Mets uniform now, he's been here for a couple of years, he's on a really good team. This is a guy that if the Mets are good, can save 50 games for this team and can be pitching huge spots in the playoffs and thriving. He is one of the best pitchers in the game. There's no question about it. It's just, can he put it together in these high leverage spots and give the Mets the type of closer that you need to win a division and ultimately try to win a pennant. I really think, though, if the Mets get what they got tonight from the three guys out of the pen, if they get that version of Chasen Shreve, that version of Drew Smith, and that version of Edwin Diaz, I don't think it matters as much what you will be getting out of a Seth Lugo or an Adam Ottavino. And if Trevor May can get healthy and be the guy that he was for the most part last year, the Mets bullpen's going to be in good shape, and it's going to look a lot better over time as they get more reps and once we kind of escape the small sample size theater. When it comes to small sample sizes, though, I'm not liking what I'm seeing early on out of Robinson Cano, so I want to talk about that in just a minute here. All right, let's begin our discussion on Robinson Cano by going through his at-bats tonight. First time up, as I mentioned earlier, bases are loaded, Zach Wheeler on the mound. Cano steps in, first pitch, hanging slider. Just looks at it. Was taken all the way, didn't even think about offering on a first pitch, and that was the pitch to hit in the at-bat. Next pitch, inside fastball. He was on it, to his credit, but he fouled it off, just missed it. Then he swings through a fastball that was about 2 feet inside and a foot down. I mean, nowhere close to the strike zone. Embarrassing strikeout, blows the one real rally the Mets strung together. It really wasn't even a rally. It was more just Zach Wheeler putting runners on base to get loose at the start of the game. But Cano ends up back at the plate in the 4th inning. Soft liner, gets out. Hits a soft grounder in the 7th. Pops up in the 9th. All soft contact. All of those outs came where he was trying to swing on a pitch, just like the one he struck out on, way inside. And so now for the season, Robinson Cano's 3 for 15. And he's 0 for his last 8. And he's gotten 4 starts out of the 6 games. Meanwhile, Dominic Smith also hasn't gone off to a great start, 1 for 8. But he's only gotten 2 starts. And he still has a higher on-base percentage than Cano because he's walked 2 times. Although Cano has also walked 2 times, but more at-bats for Cano. Here's the thing that's frustrating me right now. What is it about Robinson Cano that deserves the nod over Dominic Smith? Is it the Hall of Fame resume that he hasn't added to in 5 years? And the one that he ruined with steroids? Is it his great stature in the game as a 2-time steroid offender? Is it his incredible ability to thrive in the prime of his career at 39 years old? What's going on here? The only logical explanation I can give you for Robinson Cano getting 4 starts when Dom only has 2 is that the Mets are just trying to see if there's anything left and they are preparing to cut him. That's the one thing that would make sense to me. And if the Mets are doing that, fine by me. Okay, I said coming into the season that Cano can play a role. I still think he can. But as I'm watching the minor leagues and I'm seeing Francisco Alvarez tear the cover off the ball, and I see Brett Beatty doing the same, and Ronnie Mauricio, and I also know that even though Vientos is off to a slow start, he's going to get things going real soon, and he is very close to being big league ready. When I see all those bats that could factor in as DHs next season, I see Robinson Cano in the books. I don't see any reason why Cano should still be a Met next year. This year, while those guys are in the minors, I get it. And I was advocating for it. I said he could be a contributing factor of this team. I never said I want him to be an everyday player. And that's what has me frustrated. That's what has me pushing off Cano Island. I don't want to be part of it anymore because I never wanted to see him in the lineup every day. I envisioned Robinson Cano as a better version of the production you get from that last infielder off your bench. The Jose Peraza last year, the Travis Blankenhorns, all those guys that got at bats. Even Jonathan VR, my guy. I thought that if he went into the season with the role that Jonathan VR had, he could thrive in that role. And that role was, if you remember, not getting playing time to start the season. Then, if he gets called into action, I thought Cano could be successful. And I do think that, if Cano goes out tomorrow and plays, which I think they'll probably give him a day off. I could be wrong, but day game after a night game for a guy that old, I would think that they might give him a day. But if Robinson Cano goes out tomorrow and gets 3 hits, I wouldn't be surprised. He still helped win a game for the Mets this year, and I still think he can win more games for this team. But I don't want to see a 39-year-old get at bats over a guy who's in his prime at 26 in Dominic Smith that I think has the potential to be a bigger impact player. Dominic Smith, if you look at the stats from 2019 and 2020, and you throw out the 2021 season where he played through injuries, the guy he was in 2019 and 2020 had a WRC plus of, it was over 150. I think it was 155. Regardless, he was at least 50% better than your league average hitter because, again, WRC plus is weighted runs created plus, measuring hitters based on a league average of 100. And so Dominic Smith in those 2 seasons was exceptional. Last year, it wasn't great, but I saw what he looked like in spring. I've seen him rake before, and if he's 100% healthy, I don't understand why you are continuously running Cano out there and also hitting him at the top of the lineup. I mean, why should Cano hit above Jeff McNeil right now? Or above Mark Canha, for that matter? It just doesn't make sense to me why not only does he get the honor of starting, but he's, hitting in the top 5 in the lineup. It's baffling me at this point. And again, the only logical explanation is if the Mets just said, you know what, let's give him April, let's give him regular at-bats, and let's see what's there. Because if you look at his numbers in the Winter League, good average, but he wasn't hitting with any power. And I think Cano is the type that he can still always give you a generally good at-bat, and maybe he can always still find holes. And in situational hitting moments when there's less than 2 outs and you have runners in scoring position, it's a guy that I like seeing at the plate. Don't get me wrong. But when you need to make something happen, when there's 2 outs and there's a guy on the mound who's throwing as hard as Zach Wheeler, give me the youthful exuberance of a Dominic Smith in that spot. A guy that can actually run into a home run in the first inning and win you the ball game that quickly. Did any of us think Robinson Cano was going to go yard against Wheeler? I didn't, but I think Dominic Smith could have. And if I'm not mistaken, I saw a stat on Twitter today that Dom's like 8 for 20 in his career against Zach Wheeler. So if that's the case, then really what are we doing? Where is the advanced analytics department that's telling Buck Showalter to put Cano in the lineup? Or does Buck have full autonomy over the lineup and he's penciling Cano in? I know I said I'm not nitpicking Buck Showalter in April. That's what I said, and I meant that as far as in-game managing. But the one thing I disagree with that continues to rear its ugly head is this, intent to continue to put Cano at the forefront. And I don't think he's one of the best 5 hitters on this team. I don't know if I think he's one of the best 9 hitters on this team. I think that Robinson Cano, as I said in the offseason, as a bench player that could start in a pinch is a player I like. I like seeing Cano start for 3 weeks over Travis Blankenhorn having to come up from Syracuse. Or even, I think that Cano, as much as I love Guillorme, can give you a little bit more offensively still than a Guillorme can, just because I think the extra base prowess is a little bit more there. But honestly, the way he's looked so far, if he's a singles hitter, then shit, keep Guillorme and give Guillorme those at bats instead of Cano, because at least Guillorme is going to walk a ton and give you outstanding defense, as opposed to Cano, who should only be a DH at this stage of his career. So I'm souring on him. I felt like he deserved an opportunity at the start of this season to prove that he can play, but not this type of an opportunity. I want him to get one at bat, in a game in a big spot, get one start a week, instead of being run out there 4 out of every 5 games. It does not make sense to me. So we'll see if that holds up. Hopefully Dominic Smith is in the lineup against Aaron Nola on Wednesday. Big game, Scherzer versus Nola. You got to love going into a rubber match with Max Scherzer on the mound in a Mets uniform. That is a beautiful thing to behold. That's a day game, so make sure you watch that. Make sure you tune in to Locked On Mets. I'll have a much quicker breakdown on YouTube tomorrow. The podcast will hit the feed at a normal time. But if you want to get the quick, rapid reaction post-game show after that day game, you want to check out YouTube at Locked On Mets. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Mets. Follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Thank you for listening as always. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB, hosted by Paul Francis Sullivan. Locked On MLB is where you want to go to stay up to date with everything going on in Major League Baseball. You can follow Locked On MLB wherever you get podcasts.